So hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on career breaks and sector changes for PhD holders. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Sophie Bouccara, and I will be your presenter today. So I work as a researcher, consultant, and trainer at Adoc Talent Management, the first recruitment and consulting firm specialized in PhD profiles. Our mission is to support both PhD holders and candidates in their career transitions and professional development, while promoting the value of doctoral degree through three main activities, which are recruitment, training, and research on doctorates. So you are all invited to look at our website where you will find more information. So this webinar is part of the Secure project. The Secure project is a European initiative aimed at implementing and testing actions developed by pilot organizations, including Adoc Talent Management, in response to the European Research Career Framework published in December 2023. So as a pilot organization, Adoc Talent Management is committed at exploring and validating innovative solutions to enhance the career prospects for researchers. So this webinar is particularly relevant as it provides a platform for meaningful discussions with key stakeholders from both the public and the private sectors on crucial topic questions such as career interruptions and intersectoral transitions. Engaging with these stakeholders allows us to better understand the challenges and expectations across sectors and collaboratively develop strategy to support PhD holders and researchers navigating their professional journey more effectively. So our goal today is to explore key challenges PhD holders and researchers are facing, such as career breaks in recruitment, and how how transferable skills play a role when moving across sectors. So today, in order to discuss all these questions, I'm happy to host Matthieu Piel, who is a research director at Curie Institute in Paris, and also a jury member for INSERM recruitment committees. Hi, Matthieu. We also have the pleasure to host Emilie Resweber, who is a recruiter from a startup, Qubit Pharmaceuticals. And the last panelist is Amandine Bugnicourt, who is the CEO and co-founder at Adoc Talent Management, and who is specialized in recruitment of PhD holders and specialized also in the valorization of doctoral degrees. So before we I'll give the panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves more in detail, let's provide an overview of today's agenda. So we will go through four key steps before the Q&A session. So the first one will be the presentation of the speakers, a short presentation of the speakers. Then we will start discussing all the questions of career interruptions, and then move to the questions related to sector changes. And finally, I will give the opportunity to our speakers to give their final words and to conclude about these specific topics before a Q&A sessions. So now I will hand over to our panelists. Please, could you briefly introduce yourself and share what led you to your position of recruiter today? So maybe we can start with Emilie.
Thank you, Sophie. So my name is Emilie Resweber. I started my HR career at Amandine Institute, which is a research institute dedicated to genetic diseases. I was in charge of all the HR topics of a private foundation, but also of the coordination of academic employers as INSERM and university. I used to help team leads in recruitments for postdoc position, engineers and technicians. And I was also in charge of organizing juries for PhD selection students. After 8 years in this institute, I joined Qubit Pharmaceuticals, a startup funded by 5 academic professors. In this company, my role is the same, and recruitment is a big part of my job to support the team lead to identify the new talents for the company. I'm responsible of the whole process, recruitment process, from identifying the needs of team to the onboarding of new people. I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Emilie. Matthieu, could you present yourself?
Yeah, hello. Matthieu Piel. I'm a research director at CNRS, and I lead the research team at Institut Curie and Institut Pierre Gilles de Gênes for now 15 years. So I've been involved in recruiting people for my team and in also different Curies for university. And for the last 3 years, I've been a member of the recruiting commission of INSERM CSS1. So it's a commission mostly for cell biology researchers for INSERM, the medical research. And that's what I've done in terms of recruitment. But my main job, of course, is to do research.
Thank you, Matthieu. And Amandine?
Well, thanks for the invitation, Sophie. As far as I'm concerned, my career is at the crossroads of research, entrepreneurship, and human resources. And as you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Adoc Talent Management. So as you mentioned, so we are a human resources company focusing on PhDs and researchers. And for the last 17 years now, Adoc Talent Management has been assisting the transition of researchers from the lab into the business world and supporting and if I can say so, empowering innovative companies and deep tech startups in their HR challenges and in their team development. To do so, we offer HR and recruitment consultancy. We facilitate trainings and provide career coaching. And all this is strongly anchored and linked to our internal lab, so the Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Studies on the Doctorate. And so in a nutshell, the purpose or the DNA of Adoc Talent Management has always been bridging the gap between academia and industry, promoting diversity of teams and promoting the talents of PhDs, especially in sectors where they may be less expected as compared to academia. And so one of the keys is to ensure mutual understanding between PhDs and recruiters. And so that's the I will be sharing with you today.
Thank you, all of you, for this presentation. So now let's move to our first topic today, which is career interruptions. So we all know that many PhD holders and researchers are facing gaps in their resumes for various reasons that could be sabbaticals, parental leaves, or career changes. So in order to start this first topic, I would like to invite first Matthieu to discuss the regulatory framework and processes in place for addressing this kind of questions of career interruptions in the public sector recruitment in France. So how do you view these periods of inactivity or interruption on a professional career? And really, what are the main challenges related to this career interruption?
So we can distinguish different things, which is, you can hear me well? I feel I'm stuck.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. So there are a number of different cases. So first, there is a recruitment in, let's say, institutions like CNRS and INSERM, which goes through national exams, competitive exams, and with kind of specific requirements that I will detail after. Otherwise, you have recruitment in a lab for, let's say, a job that will be depends on the type of jobs, but different institutes can propose jobs which can be also the position like CDI, I don't know how to say it in like permanent contract like CDI, or a short-term contract CDD. And there it's much more flexible, let's say, because there are not such rules like for the national exams. So if I go to the CNRS INSERM type of recruitment, let's say at the moment, the most strict one is CNRS, because they started to decide very recently that they want to hire people at a young age. And so they have, let's say, it's an unofficial age limit that is not really your age, but the number of years after your PhD. So at the moment, they strongly encourage the committees to recruit at a maximum of 5 or 6 years after a PhD. So that limits the number of other things you can do after your PhD, and also with number of consequences of decision of defending PhD and staying in your lab, for example, would not be something to encourage in this context. Having long postdocs or multiple postdocs or a career leave would be detrimental to get into CNRS at the moment. And the age limit they have, like, maybe not more than 36, 37 for the entry position, the chargé de recherche position. So that's, I don't know if we can do something about that because it's pretty bad, but at the moment that's what it is. And the national committee said that they would not accept people, even if the commissions rank people, if they don't, if they are too old or they are too far after the PhD, they would not be considered. So that's CNRS. INSERM is pretty different. So INSERM doesn't have this age limit or number of years after the PhD, even in a sort of non-official way. I mean, this is not considered for INSERM positions. Still, as an INSERM committee member, I've been seeing that after a certain age or certain number of years after the postdoc, after the PhD, it starts to be more and more difficult to be considered for hiring. And there is really a gap between people who are in the sort of, let's say, I would say within 10 years after their PhD and more, and also people who are more than 40 years old. There is a sort of gap. It's not, but there is nothing strict. I mean, some atypical careers can be considered, and in this commission where I am, it's really some effort that's being made to have a diversity of profiles. That's really something we try to do, really, because if you just rank people, you will end up with a big discrimination, of course, for a lot of different criteria, and so we make an effort to really diversify. But so that the one thing that this commission is pretty strict on, I realized, and I was a little bit surprised, but it's what it is that anything you've done needs to have been kind of productive, if you want. So if you did 3 postdocs, each postdoc has to have a paper. If you did 3 postdocs, probably you cannot get in CNRS. You can get in INSERM, but you have to have 1 paper for each of your postdocs. It doesn't have to be a big paper. It can be very small paper, but somehow this has to be published. And that's very special, but that's how it is. And then I had also experience from candidates who left academy for private, and there I mean, what was often problematic is if they were hiding that, and it appeared as a hole in there. So I think for some reason in this committee, it's a lot of people, so it's hard to really understand how these large committees work really in details. But you had a very strong sort of discrimination against people who have holes in their CV. So anything you did must be explained. And really there was at least one example where it was really a pity because a person went for working in startup companies, and the startup didn't work, which is just normal, and so went back for a postdoc because she wanted to go back to research. And in the end, in the CV, there was a sort of 2 years gap because she didn't want to seem negative about an experience which had failed, if you want, in a way, while it is not a weakness. I mean, so the only thing is to put it in a positive way and really to show that it's an experience. I think that would not have been a problem. But it's just that she was she's just left a sort of hole in her, and she was actually going to interview, and at interview again, she did not explain what she did during these 2 years. And so that was the problem. So otherwise for women, there is obviously maternity leaves are completely accepted. There's no problem with that at all. And also it's always considered in terms of number of years and all that. It's integrated 1 year per child. And so this is not, this I think is pretty well integrated. But yeah, a gap is negative. A gap with nothing in it. Yeah, you have to explain what you did. Yeah, that's what I can say. Not being too long because other people have to say. Yeah. Okay,
thank you, Matthieu, for this insight. Maybe we can now discuss how it works across sectors, and we can ask Emilie to comment on that. How do you view periods of inactivity or interruption in a professional career? And like was mentioned by Matthieu, sometimes it's not mentioned on the resume. So what is your approach to obtain this kind of information?
In my context, career interruptions are not a problem. It's true that some recruiters will have bias against career breaks, but the trend is for them to be more open. The trend is really moving. A recruiter will systematically identify interruption on a CV. So it's very important, as Matthieu said, that to be able to explain them and not to try to ignore or to hide them. The aim is not to give a lot of details, but just to explain the reason in general terms. It's increasingly common to see now maternity leave, paternal leave, and sabbatical leave on CVs. And it's also okay to say to recruiter that you wanted to stop a position to another one, or because you want to move from a country to another one, or just because you wanted to leave a professional environment or position that no longer suits you. I think my main advice for that is just to be transparent and clear. What is also important for candidates who has a break in their CV is to turn it in a positive way to show how this break can be benefit for them personally and professionally with the acquisition of new skills or the development of new skills. And also after a long break, I appreciate when candidates show that they are still up to date regarding their field of activity, regarding innovation and evolution, and how they plan and organize their return to work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Emilie. Amandine, would you like to add anything on what was just said and mentioned here?
Yeah, there's one aspect that I feel is really important is that, in fact, there are so many different reasons for which candidate may experience career breaks. And I think some are more likely to be mentioned on a CV than others, like traveling around the world or dedicating 1 year to NGO project, for instance. In any case, what I want to emphasize as a recruiter is that as an interviewer, our only concern should be, is there a good match between the job and the working environment and the skills and motivation of the candidate? That's the only concern we should have. But that being said, that's the reality. And to be honest, I personally experienced several times a strong temptation from recruiters to refuse directly to give an interview to a candidate that I presented and who had a long gap in his CV. In that case, my approach is to try to understand the fear behind this reaction and to emphasize the strength of the candidate for the job. The fear can be is the candidate able to go back to work, accept long working hours, make all the efforts needed to deliver? Is the candidate emotionally stable? Is the candidate a problematic candidate and no one wants to give him a chance? And that's why he was unemployed for so long. So in that case, I don't want him. And so on. Plenty of fears. And in all cases, there are competencies and attitude that we can clearly investigate during interviews. And so I always try to focus back on what we should and could investigate, because as Emilie mentioned, I mean, career breaks, but also career switches, it's something we have to get used to. Obviously, both the upcoming new generation of workers who do not imagine holding the same job for too long, and with also all the career breaks and switches that happen after the COVID crisis from workers who were just looking for a more meaningful career or job. And in those cases, career breaks can happen. As a recruiter, we have to accept that what we previously considered as a non-conventional career is now probably the standard, or will be the standard. So, and then also to emphasize what Emilie said on the fact that it's important to promote the skills that you acquired through those breaks. Each of us, we are just rich from all our working experience, and navigating from one sector to another is a way to become an hybrid person, to become a bridge who can understand both sectors, enhance intersectorial collaboration, and foster innovation in a way. And so I'm so sad to hear what Matthieu said about candidates who just did their startup experience thinking that the jury, the committee at INSERM wouldn't accept them for that. It's a nonsense for me.
Thank you, all of you. Matthieu, Emilie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, the one particularity of these INSERM and CNRS committees that they are competitive exams, so you are a limited number of places, and so it's really, yeah, where you have to make the difference. And so these career breaks are, yeah, you have to put them at your advantage. I mean, you cannot hide them, and yeah, it has to be put in a positive way, and then many other things count. But I think that's the difference from someone who is really just hiring whoever thinks would fit the job. I mean, that's not the case for the CNRS on INSERM. It's not, yeah. That's, but when we hire people for a lab, for example, or a private institute like Institut Curie, that's more a classical recruitment, yeah, where this would not be a problem at all.
Anything else, Emilie,
No.
Amandine? No? Okay, so I think we can we can conclude here that for all the sectors, the main advice here is to not hide any experience, and being transparent on it in order to be able also to valorize these experiences all along the recruitment process. So thank you all for your comment and your insights on these questions that are many interesting for researchers all along their careers. And I am sure that we will have a better understanding now on how career breaks are perceived on the different sectors and throughout the recruitment process. So we can now move to the next session that was introduced briefly by Amandine when she talked about sector changes. So this second major topic of the seminar, of the webinar today, we all know that transitioning between academia, public and private sector can present unique challenges but also opportunities for all the sectors. So I'd like to first give the floor to Amandine, who co-founded Adoc Talent Management in 2008. So could you share, please, with us what motivated you in establishing Adoc Talent Management back then in 2008, and particularly in a question related to sector transitions?
Well, if I want to keep my answer really short, the goal was to facilitate this kind of transition, because we were so convinced that we needed more people who would make this transition, both at an early phase of their career, but also after, and transitioning back to academia after is also a huge challenge. But at that moment, it was really seen as an unconventional career path to transition. And in some ways, it's still the case, but I would like to remind a simple fact. In France and elsewhere, most PhD holders are transitioning from academia to the business sector within 5 years after graduating. Most PhD won't hold permanent position within academia. So even if it is still considered as the unconventional career path, maybe at one point we will have to challenge this vision. What is unconventional when it's the majority? Let's discuss that maybe. And now to move back to your central question. To be honest, there is no easy answer, since the skill set expected differs from one position to another. So I will not be able to provide a comprehensive answer. Instead, I will pick up a couple of examples from various economic sectors, and I will also quote data from surveys and studies that we performed within our laboratory. I will focus on the private sector to let Matthieu answer about the academic sector. But in the private sector, for me, there's an important difference between deep tech or tech startup and more conventional or less innovation-driven sectors. In deep tech ventures, innovation is everywhere, and it's the core of the company. So PhDs are hired obviously for R&D position, but also for C-level position, CTO or CSO, but also Chief Business Officer, Chief Product Officer, Chief Operation Officer, or regularly are holding the CEO position, like in Qubit Pharmaceuticals with Robert. So for R&D position, the expectation that I see the most is a mix between a strong technical background, technical expertise on the topic of interest of the company, but also a good technical leadership, including the ability to define and implement the roadmap or part of the roadmap, to make choices with independent thinking, with critical thinking, to solve problems and to learn fast, to stay at the state of the art, and even to push the state of the art, and also to connect the company with academic ecosystems. So that's what I can try to summarize from innovative sector. Now, when a company is looking for PhDs for jobs outside the R&D department, the motivation may not be linked to the expertise developed by the PhD holders. For instance, in the consulting sector, and I chose this example because it's a big pool of jobs for PhDs. What we are asked the most is the ability to enter new topics, to analyze complex issues, to conduct a watch, to analyze information, to communicate about it. And if I also pick up some data from studies that we perform, among the transferable competencies that are the most valuable for PhD holder for their first job after graduating, here is the list. So I took notes to forget. So analytical and critical thinking, ability to deal with complex issues, problem solving, creativity, persistence, autonomy, rigor, communication, collaboration ability, project management, ability to learn fast, and scientific watch. Those are the main skills that are valued to find the first job.
Thank you, Amandine. Maybe Emilie, you would like to complete about the private sector?
I think we have nearly the same list of skills. This is the ones I underlined. Yes, recruiting PhD holders, it's really to recruit expertise in the field, an ability to innovate and to be critical, and rigor. Of course, there is a lot of difference between public and private, but maybe we'll talk about it later in the meeting. Yeah, I agree with all Amandine analysis. It's okay for me. Nothing else to add for that.
You can talk now about the differences if you want.
So, I had a discussion before the webinar with one of my colleagues who jumped from a PhD to a position at Qubit, and I was asking her the main challenges she has to expect joining the company. And for her, the big challenge was more to adapt to a new work culture. Mm-hmm. PhD students, PhD holders joining a private company have to adapt different working environments with different objectives, rhythm, and work structures and codes. And I think that's the most difficult things they have to face joining a company. It's completely different. I think in academic laboratory, you have more freedom to choose your research topic, whereas in a private company, you can't choose a topic. You have to focus on the business, on the results, and it can change not because you want to discover something else, but just because it's necessary for the company to go in another direction. And it was the main thing that people said joining a private company. This new culture, this new way of work.
The main challenge that PhD holders faced while joining the private sector. Okay, thank you, Emilie. So Matthieu, would you agree to talk about for the public sector? So maybe more general questions for the public sector. The first one would be what kind of qualities and qualifications do you prioritize when recruiting candidates as in research positions? And the second one would be more about what was discussed right now about what kind of skills would you be interested in the public sector from people coming from the private sector? So I guess during your committees, you also experienced candidates, as you mentioned before, coming from the private sector, and what was interesting for you in the public sector from these specific candidates?
Yeah, I think that, again, due to the context, I mean, there's really no public research position that would not go through a sort of competitive exam. So you don't really recruit researchers for, unfortunately, it's like that, even for at the university, you don't recruit really someone for his skills. It's not like, oh, let's recruit someone who does like this or that. I mean, who knows how to do this or that. It's really, you have candidates, they can do any sort of thing, and you have to rank them because you have a number of positions. And so we have ranking criteria that we grade, and it's usually done in 2 steps. So you first have a ranking based on really the written files, and then you have an interview. So the most difficult part is to get to the interview, obviously, and the interview, when you're there, you already have a like 50% chance to get the job. and interview, and let's say, yeah, interview is really then more about the personality, the quality, research, and yeah, quality as a scientist, that you can evaluate more directly. For the written part, there are criteria that are great, I mean, on which we put grades. So it's very bad, I feel. And I think everybody feels it's bad, but we don't know how to do otherwise. So we put grades on let's say the career path, where you went, which labs, diversity of topics and stuff like that. We've put a grade on the realization, I mean, basically what you were able to achieve in terms of, and that's mostly publications or patents. But so whatever you produced out of your different the different jobs you had, and then we have a criteria which is about the project, because people propose a research project also. Yeah, so a written research project. So each of these are graded, and that puts a sort of ranking, and then we discuss more in detail. But like people with very low grades are not really much discussed. You know, people in the middle are the ones that are discussed the most, because we want to see where to put the threshold, and then on the top it's not discussed very much either. But you have, yeah, and so that's, I would say again, on these grades, typically for the career productivity or this kind of things, what seems to matter in the end is to be productive all along. And I must say I was a bit surprised, I mean, and I think it's a big difference maybe between CNRS and INSERM, is that there is not so much attention. I mean, it's not a big, you know, very often when you're a student, you feel, okay, I have to publish in these big journals to be on the top. It's not true. I mean, what's more important is to publish than to publish in a big journal. And actually, there is a pretty broad range of journals that are considered very good, and there is no difference made between these and the, like, you know, Holy Trinity, Science, Nature, and so on. And if you have a regular, I mean, I can give you the example of the one that was ranked first at INSERM last year. Mm-hmm. She had one first author paper for a PhD in Nature Communication, which is good, but is like on the big pile of good journals, and one publication as a first author in a postdoc in current biology. And she was ranked first because she had, you know, very nice, consistent career, very beautiful results, and gave a great talk. So that's, you should not focus so much on, yeah, it's really, I understood actually through being in this committee what also I should advise my postdoc in my lab to do. So don't go for 6-7 years on the same topic trying to get your paper in Science or Nature, but you'd rather, as soon as you have something consistent and nice, try to publish it in a nice journal after 3-4 years, would be what is expected for INSERM or CNRS. I don't say it's good in general for French research, because I think long research projects are nice too, but it's not what you should do. Yeah, that's what we, I would say the main criteria is there. Like, do nice research in a reasonable time and publish it in a good enough journal, and then you are, and this sort of regularity. I don't, that's what I observed. I cannot tell you if it's good or not. It's more really what I observed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Matthieu. So to ask also from the private sector opinion also about, so Matthieu mentioned that production is very important all along the recruitment process. How is it perceived in the private sector? Do you look at the publications? How is it important for you? Is it not important? Or how do you evaluate and assess all the production? Emilie?
Yes, to be honest, I don't have a big look at publication. I let this part to my colleagues in teams, in scientific teams. Yes, for sure, they have a look at publication, but it's not the main criteria to recruit, especially young PhD holder.
Okay, Amandine?
Well, if I can add my contribution, it depends really for R&D job in which the scientific expertise is important. Yes, we have a look at publication and our clients have a look at the publication, but not only to assess how good is the journal or whatever. It's also to create a discussion on the contribution of the person, the technical choices he had to make, the difficulties he had to face to go to the result, and so on. And so it's also a way to assess the scientific approach of the candidate, to make him discuss about his work, and then to create link between what he did, his contribution so far, and the type of topic and challenges he would have to face, to also understand how transferable it will be, because most of the time, even if it's the same domain, it might be different in terms of scientific issue or of type of methods to be used and so on. So it's not the production per se, the scientific production per se. It's really to understand better the background and the skills of the person as well. But obviously, it's a criteria.
So it's interesting also to have this in mind, that both in the public and the private sector, publications and production are part of the criteria to be.
At least for R&D jobs.
At least for R&D jobs, yes. Okay. So in this sector change topic, would you like any of you to add anything? Do you have something in mind to add? I have actually a question for Matthieu, also because you mentioned that skills are not part of the criteria, but you, as experiencing being part of committees, did you have any experience of candidates coming from the private, and you noticed some specific skills that were acquired in the private sector, or you didn't experience this at all?
No, we had. It's quite rare, I must say, because I think, again, I mean, there might be a number of reasons, but I think it's often hard to come back to the academic research after going to private because of the time, simply because of all these clocks that run, and then you are not competitive anymore to come back, and so on. There maybe one thing I've seen more is someone who was actually going to private, but really no private, but research, not research and development, because there are also like fundamental research in private sector, and then who is coming back at a higher level, like research director, because of course, I mean, I'm mostly talking for recruitments here at the level of chargé de recherche, which is a basic level, but you have also recruitment at director level. Of course, there are very few positions at director level. That makes it more difficult because it's a lot for internal promotion more than external hiring. But we had that experience of someone applying from high position in private research to high position in public, and that works. That works. I mean, that is like, yeah, clearly, if you have a career in the private, a real career, and you want to go back to public, and you had a research career in the private sector, you can go back to academic research. That's totally working. But again, you will be judged based on your publications and in the same criteria as people coming from academic. I mean, because what I was mentioning before, for people applying for basic research position, often they went for a few years in a startup or something like that. So it's a short. So it's not really a full experience, let's say, and it's often more difficult to valorize because you have no publication as it. But if you have patents, for example, that can be nice. Yeah. It's a bit special, and this me, I'm not fully convinced with this way we recruit for these institutions, but at the moment, yeah, it's like that. So it's very much on like this, yeah, competitive thing. So basically, the point is to hire people who would be like competitive at an international level, as we always now recruit so few that it's all kind of should have a profile of a team leader with an international level after 5-10 years of having their research position. And so, yeah, it's very special, and we don't really know how to identify these people, but at the moment it's very, let's say, scholar, like you need to have good grades. It means you need to have your publications and your stuff and be a, yeah. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but I think it's like that at the moment. Yeah.
May I add something, Sophie?
Yes, sure.
Well, obviously there's a huge question mark on how to foster more diversity in the academic sector. But to come back to your questions, for people who switch to the private sector and then want to turn back, switch back to academia, what I see a lot is not to try to get position as a chargé de recherche, so the researcher's jobs, but more into the other civil servant corps, as what we so call in France, so ingénieur et technicien et administratif. So in which you are more on support function for research, and I have also large experience seeing people, for instance, trying to work in the consulting sector or in incubators or in plenty of structures that exist at this frontier between academia and the business sector, or working in startup, who moved back to academia but more on coordination jobs, on valorization jobs, and so on. And this can work perfectly fine, and it's promoted in this case.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've not been part of recruitment committees for engineers. It's very special. It's very different. It works totally differently. It's not really competitive exams. It's very different. Even for TNRS and INSERM, it's
or collaborative platforms as well, like technical platforms with which offer services to researchers. It's also places where you can find PhDs who experience this type of transition.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So from this topic, I think we can summarize that by saying that there are plenty of skills that are useful from the public, from the academia to the private sector, that were emphasized both by Emilie and Amandine, and they kind of agreed of all the skills. So it's interesting also to realize that you both agreed on all of these skills. Something also I'd like to highlight here is that it's also possible to publish in the private sector and then move back to the public sector. And it's feasible, as Matthieu discussed right before. So basically, these are the two main points. You mentioned a lot of different stuff, but I'd like to emphasize these two main points to conclude on this session about sector changes. So now we will we are close to the end of the webinar, but I would like to give each of you a few minutes to conclude about these two topics. If you have some suggestions, or a practical advice for candidates navigating their careers. So we will start with Emilie. Do you have any suggestion on how candidates can highlight unconventional experiences in their application?
It's the same that I said before. The important that it's not to try to hide experiences or break. It's very important just to explain and to give information to the recruiter. It's also important to take the time to prepare the interview and to be curious about the company, the environment, the organization of work, and to not hesitate to ask questions about the interview. What will be the topic of the interview? And to be sure to have a lot of questions also to ask to the recruiter to be sure to well understand the work environment. What is important also, I think, which could be a good help when you try to find a new position, it's to use your network to contact people working in other companies or in the same position you apply for, just to ask for advices or to ask for information to better understand the position and what people are supposed to expect for that.
Thank you, Emilie. Matthieu, would you like to conclude on these two topics?
Yeah, so again, as I said, if you add a career bet on experience in a private sector, you really have to put it in your CV and make it part of your whatever you did between your PhD and your application. And actually, people from the committee are impressed by these kind of things in general. So just don't put it aside as if it was like not a valuable experience. I mean, most people are impressed if people are able to go for a few years in a private company, come back, and then publish again as a postdoc, and like really get back into the academic world. So yeah, so that's really more like viewed as positive. Also because I think now in the career of a researcher, it's much more common to come across start making your own startup or taking some patents. So these are valued skills for sure. So, but you really have to put it forward in your CV. But that given, you will still be judged on your publications, of course, because we recruit scientists. So it's like that.
Okay, thank you, Matthieu. Amandine?
Well, first, I agree with what was mentioned already. I also wanted to comment based on the questions that were asked in the chat, but in a nutshell, my main tip would be to reduce your experience, no matter what type of experience this is in terms of acquired hard and soft skills, to make it understandable. It's really likely that recruiters may not be aware of what it is to prepare a PhD if they are from the private sector, to conduct a research project, especially when the company does not have an R&D department or is not used doing PhDs. It's also true when you think about academic recruiters. They may not be aware of what's going on when you work in the private sector. So always make these efforts to reduce the experience in terms of skills and tasks and so on. The marketing of skills takes a large importance to show how valuable they will be in the new context. So PhD have to gain awareness about their skills and self-confidence about the transferability of many skills that I acquired first through the practice of research, but they can be transferred to another job or another sector. And then what Emilie mentioned about networking plays a crucial role in the sector transition, since it's the best way to understand the other side of the mirror and then to be able to promote properly your skills and show that you are ready to face this cultural shock that Emilie mentioned before. You are ready because you understand the challenges, you understand the context, and you will integrate smoothly.
Thank you, the three of you, for your conclusion. So now we will have a session of a question and answer. So please, the audience, you can raise your hand and ask your question.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your time and your valuable advice. Regarding the age that you mentioned, that most of the companies or the academic positions do not recruit the people with the age above 40. Regarding my background, I graduated from pharmacy in my country, Iran. And then after a lot of experience in pharmaceutical company and even I had my own pharmacy, and I didn't have even one day career break. I decided to continue my study, and I came to France and I continued my PhD in biotechnology. And then I'm doing my postdoc, but it's a little bit frightening for me that if my now I'm 39, and I'm thinking that if I want to continue to work in CNRS or I don't know, INSERM or any pharmaceutical company in research and development, is the age matter? Does the age matter for me? That I have a lot of experience, but I'm actually I don't know that which part I mentioned. Do I need to mention that I have more than 10 years experience, or it just count after the PhD finishing and just 1 year after of postdoc? That's a little bit confusing for me. Would you please explain more about that? Thank you.
So first of all, with regards to the academic jury requirements, it's more in terms of number of years after defending your PhD, what they normally take into account, and it's more, is the production enough as compared to the number of years after the PhD. About the transition to the business sector, there is no rule, and you are rich with all your experiences, and it's more and more classical to do the PhD after a couple of years, especially when you come with an international background. There are many countries in which it's like the standard to prepare the PhD after a few years in the industry. So no problem with that. You really have to work out well your CV and your pitch during interviews to help us understand that it's rich and not messy. And that you show your different experience, and they provide you with a unique profile that we couldn't find in more classical path just after with a PhD, which was prepared just after the master. And I don't want to sell dreams, so I'm also here to highlight the fact that transitioning from academia to the private sector after 4 postdoc or 5 postdoc is much harder in classical sectors, at least, than transitioning just after the PhD or after 1 postdoc. And the reason behind is that a lot of recruiters are frightened that they are seen as the last solution. The solution you didn't want, because you always wanted to have a civil servant job at CNRS, but it didn't work out, and that's why you finally realize you have no other choice, and nobody wants to be the last choice, you know. So when you transition later on, it's really important that you first of all, you are willing to transition. It's not a default option, and that you rebuild the explanation about your career with all your strengths. And I could talk for hours, but I will stop talking.
Yeah, Matthieu, maybe you can.
My connection broke, so took a bit of time to go like that. I'm answering to the same person who was asking about being in pharmacy before doing a PhD. I think the rule, I just told you for CNRS that they have this rule for a number of years after the PhD, so that would not be a problem, but also they have a sort of age limit. And so maybe it means that you should not apply to CNRS, but you should consider maybe INSERM rather than CNRS at the moment. It's like really how it is at the moment for CNRS. They have this, but in any case, you have to see that very exceptional types of careers are also considered apart. I mean, you did a late PhD is very different from someone who is above 40 because they have been doing like 4 or 5 postdocs. See, so I don't know how that would be judged at CNRS. For INSERM, I think it's not a problem. Just have, again, as I just heard, I mean, you have to put it as something positive, and and again, that would be, you could fit into this sort of atypical profile that we try. Of course, that would not be the majority, but there will be always 1 or 2 each year for position for atypical profiles.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The door is not shut for sure.
Great
Thank
to
you.
hear. Maybe we'll take a last question before we close. We conclude everything. So there is one more question.
So thank you very much for your nice discussions. I actually have a question I think many of the PhDs already have in their mind, especially the young PhDs who are just graduating. So my field is quite interesting in the energy storage sector, and it's quite booming in Europe and all over the world. But it's still difficult to find the first job, especially after the PhD, because sometimes industries are hesitant and always looking, when you look for the job, like 2 or 3 years of experience, and it's very hard to find the fresh PhD's job in the industry. And regarding that, of course, some consider the experience which we get in PhD, but it's not always the same. And then regarding the recruiters, like I have been in contact with many recruiters, and I try to contact them, send them the CV, and I get acknowledgement. But after that, like waiting months, no response or nothing, like an offer is coming in the industry, like maybe you can apply on that. So it's also like really depressing on that sense as well, that like we are not getting anywhere. So it's getting difficult. So what we can do in this regard? Thank you so much.
Who wants to take this question?
For positions, in my context, we recruit a young PhD holder just after the PhD. To be honest, I think it depends on companies and also about the role and the position. Sometimes we need also people with more seniority. For the non-answer after applying to a position, sometimes it's not easy to give the feedback writing an email. So you have the right to contact the recruiter to ask more information, especially when you want to improve your resume, cover letter, or also if you want to improve yourself during an interview. You have the right to ask. I have a lot of candidates who ask more feedback, and we try to take time to give this feedback by a specific meeting, or it depends of the topic. But I know that some recruiters don't take the time or don't have also the time to spend with all candidates to give it. But you have the right to ask.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good advice that you feel free also to contact and to discuss with recruiters. Amandine, would you like to add something short because we need to conclude?
I agree with Emilie. I mean, there are jobs that are really open to freshly graduated PhDs, for sure. In terms of trends, what I see is that the more the labor market in your field is tense or penury, the more you are likely to be hired just after the PhD. The less it is tense, the more we may be like, okay, one more experience would be needed, and so on. So also try to identify weak signals or the trends in your field that could help you have more attractive CV and highlighting properly the assets on your CV. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you. So it's coming to the end. It was a really interesting discussion. So I think today's discussion has provided valuable insights into the challenges and opportunities that PhD holders, researchers face when dealing with career interruption and sector transitions. This type of initiative is crucial for the Secure project, as it encourages collaboration and develops practical solutions to support researchers in their career transition in line with the European Research Framework published recently. We hope you leave this session feeling more informed and empowered to navigate your professional journey with confidence. Please remember that every career path is unique, and embracing flexibility and adaptability can lead to rewarding opportunities. I would like to thank all our panelists for their valuable insights, and all the audience for joining us today. For any question, feel free to contact us. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a great day.